Hello everyone and welcome back to another AFK journey video. In this video we're going to be covering the Honor Duel because whether you like it or not, this is a gameplay mode you're probably playing every week if you want to get maximum rewards, which are the diamonds and the invite letters. So along with that, you can also rank up highly in this mode, and that will contribute some more guild chests to your guild, and at the end of the week all of your guild members will benefit a little bit from that. So what I have before you is a tier list for Honor Duel made by Lele0, who is a Twitch live streamer. He was regularly playing Honor Duel and climbed to one of the highest ranking points in the game. In the whole of AFK journey, not only within his district. And so he has a lot of experience. He put together this tier list, and overall I agree pretty much 100% with the positioning of everything. So we're going to explain the positioning, also explain the best in slot equipment that he selected here, and we'll give you some alternatives for the equipment if you can't manage to find these equipment pieces. But the first tip of Honor Duel is that you want to focus on a specific faction and decide early on which faction you're focusing on, and then you're going to want to build up a team of 5 heroes from that faction, or potentially 3 heroes from that faction and 2 from another faction. So in terms of consistency and overall, like, the opinion from a lot of people and even high-ranking players, Graveborn and Wilders are going to be the most consistent comps to force in Honor Duel. They just are more consistent than Maulers and Lightbearers as a comp. The other thing about Lightbearers is they actually shine the most when you're just using 2 of them, Lucius and Rowan, along with a team of 3 of another faction, like 3 Graveborns or 3 Wilder heroes. Because the strongest Lightbearer heroes, as you can see from the tier list, are Lucius and Rowan. Lucius gives a lot of shielding and protection for your team. Rowan gives the energy generation for your team, allowing you to cast more ultimates, and that can turn the tides of a fight. So these 2 are very strong, and also Lucius and Rowan are strong even at 1 copy, like their epic quality upgrade, even before they're ascended through the tiers. So heroes which are good at epic, and then also good at Mythic, these are going to be the best heroes for Honor Duel, because early on in Honor Duel, you will not have high upgrades of your heroes, they won't be ascended, and it will even take a while for you to get them to Legendary. And so the heroes which are really wanting their Mythic Plus upgrade, which you will only unlock at the Mythic upgrade, those are going to be heroes which don't do as well in Honor Duel. And Honor Duel, yeah. So that is why Thorin and Damien, although in terms of PvP heroes, Thorin and Damien are top of the PvP chart, so you would think they would be the best in Honor Duel. But the problem is, a lot of their kit is their Mythic Plus ability. You want the Soul Pack from Thorin, you want the continuous healing and haste buff from Damien at Mythic Plus. So if you can get them to Mythic upgrade, then definitely they can be one of the best options for your team, but you're not guaranteed to get there. And a lot of Honor Duel is actually like brawling it out in the lore, like before you get to many wins, and at that point having a Damien or a Thorin who are not at the Mythic upgrade are not going to be amazing for your team. That being said, I still think Thorin is not bad, and for a Graveborn team he can be a fine tank to use. You could even use him rather than Salazar, for example, in your 5-member Graveborn team. But Damien has a lot to be wanted for before getting the Mythic upgrade. So Damien is why he lags behind, and so your team will be weaker in the early win counts, and you could just get knocked out early on. So that is his problem. So let's talk about the equipment. So as you can see from the S rank heroes, a lot of them have the Gaze of Power, which is the amulet, like on Cecia, Haywin, Floribel. And this is one of the most powerful pieces of equipment because it will allow you to ultimate right at the beginning of the match. I have the wiki pulled up so we can look at all of this information. So Gaze of Power. Cast ultimate once without costing energy, but reduces the carrier's damage dealt by 50% for 10 seconds afterwards. So for a hero which is a supportive hero, for example, Coco, Rowan, and Haywin, the drawback makes no difference to them because their role is to support the team. They don't care about their damage output. So being able to get that ultimate at the beginning of the fight is a huge advantage for your team. Floribel and Cecia, they do contribute damage, but more importantly, if you can get the stun at the beginning of the fight with their summon, it is a big power swing. It gives your team the time to then generate up their energy to cast their ultimates and just to maybe kill an enemy right at the beginning. So both Cecia and Floribel are going to be, this is the best in slot equipment piece for them at this rarity, which is the elite rarity, purple rarity of equipment. Okay, let's move on to Sylvina. So Sylvina is the only hero he's actually selected for the best in slot equipment to be the Mask of Fury. So what does the Mask of Fury do? It increases 100% attack and reduces 50 haste. So it comes with a pretty big drawback. However, for Sylvina specifically, her first strike will scale on her attack damage, and it's a very high multiplier. So if you have 100% bonus attack, she is going to be hitting so hard with the first strike. And then also at the beginning of the match, Sylvina's attack speed is fast enough. 50 haste reduction is going to reduce your attack speed by 50% and also reduce your skill casting frequency by 50%. But if a hero depends a lot on their damage from basic normal attacks, like Sylvina for example, then the haste reduction will not impact them as much. If they have more damage from their skill casting, that's when this haste reduction is going to be more like detrimental to them. But this is a good choice for Sylvina. But what I usually go for is the for Heavy Axe. Heavy Axe I think is a really good option for Sylvina as well. Increases damage dealt to the enemy 2 tile away or closer by 30%. And Sylvina is like a 1 range melee attacker, so this damage is going to go off. And I believe it would go off even on her first strike, because she will be right next to the enemy when the first strike damage goes off. And it also reduces the enemy's damage dealt to the carry by 15% if they're 2 tile away or closer, so that the enemies attacking her who are close to her, she will be taking less damage from them. So I think Heavy Axe is another great equipment choice for Sylvina. If you don't want to go for the Mask of Fury, but this is a really good option. Moving on to Igor. Igor has the Bone... if we just read the actual name, Bone Amulet. So this is a really interesting equipment choice, which I didn't actually experiment with much, but it makes a lot of sense why this would be the best option for Igor. So what does Igor do? Igor deals AoE damage with his ultimate cast. He is in the middle of the team, so it's bound to hit almost all of the enemies, and when he jumps, one of his skill casting, that is also an AoE damaging attack. So heroes with AoE damage and on a pretty low cooldown or regular AoE damage, they are really going to benefit from this equipment. Ignites the target when dealing damage, causing true damage equal to 3% of the target's max HP per second for 5 seconds. So in total, that is going to be 15% of the target's max HP over 5 seconds. And this will be to all enemies hit. So this is a great way to ramp up Igor's damage. Another good option that I've tried, I even go for sometimes Abyssal Mask, because he has a lot of survivability even if he takes more damage. The fact that he can deal more damage by 40% is good for him, because he's not easy to kill. He keeps jumping around the map even at the point of death. So I like Abyssal Mask on him, or even you can go for Heavy Axe again, because he does go up right close to the enemies, and he is going to mostly be dealing his damage to close by 2 tile away enemies. So that is why I think Heavy Axe is again a good option, but I think the Bone Amulet is the #1 choice, as Lele Zero has indicated here. Now, going down the list for the Graveborns, you have Carolina and Salazar. So Carolina is going to be one of your major damage sources, and especially if you have her artifact which powers up Carolina, because there are 2 specific artifacts which are both really strong picks in Honor Duel. One of them, I believe, is a Pale Crown, which will empower Sylvina's first strike, and the other one is Carolina, I think Snow Herb, if I remember correctly, but it is one which is going to power up Carolina's damage over the course of the fight. So Carolina is going to be a great option if you have that artifact, and even if you don't, she is going to be one of the best heroes to run in a 5-man Graveborn team. So she deals a lot of damage. Her best equipment that has been selected is a hunting armor. A hunting armor is a really powerful piece of equipment, and usually it's recommended on heroes which are long range heroes, if you don't want to go for like that immediate ultimate cast at the sacrifice of your damage, because this will block the first fatal blow and become immune to all damage and control effects for 5 seconds. So it gives the hero a lot of bonus survivability. Basically a second life almost, and being immune for 5 seconds and even to control effects means you're going to be getting off an additional 5 seconds of damage. So Carolina is good with this. Salazar is also a great option for this. Basically any damage dealer hero will really benefit from the hunting armor. And so Salazar is good because even before his mythic upgrade, he is strong, he deals a lot of damage, and his ultimate cast can go off even onto the backline enemy heroes, and you can nuke them down and get the 5v4 advantage. Thorin is a good option if you want to use him. He's fine, and then once he gets to Mythic, he would be probably even better than Salazar. But before a Mythic upgrade, that is why he's in the lower tier, because he's not going to be as great for your team. And in Honor Duel in general, having just a really solid tank isn't always the way that you win, especially for the Graveborns. It's actually a damage through Sylvina, the lockdown of Cisia, and bursting the enemies. So that's why Salazar fits a bit better in that team composition. But Thorin is fine, and the best item for Thorin probably would be the item which has also been selected for Granny, because that is a tanking item. It's called the Stalwart Helmet. It reduces the damage dealt and damage taken by 40%. Another reason why Thorin is weaker in Honor Duel is he's actually nerfed in the Honor Duel compared to his normal strength. He has 30% less damage dealt in Honor Duel specifically. There are some basically balance changes or balance nerfs and buffs to heroes specifically for Honor Duel. You can read that on the Honor Duel page, but Thorin is one which suffers basically disadvantaged because of that. So that's another reason. Now Viperia and Nero, these are not going to be great options. Nero you might think would be good as a support, but he just doesn't provide enough to your team. It's better to just have a well built up team with high damage, and you're just trying to lock them down with Cisia right away, and then burst them through with Sylvina first strike, and follow-up damage and Carolina damage over time should try to kill. And then the bone on Igor, I think, is definitely the best choice. Okay, moving on to the Wilder faction. So Wilder is going to be, after Graveborn, I think the second most consistent high win rate average team. And for some people, they prefer Wilders even to Graveborns. So yeah, so Haywin Floorball again are going to have the Gaze of Power to get the immediate ultimate cast without the cost of any energy, and the reduced damage doesn't really matter as much because the stun from Floorball is so much more impactful, and then the Haywin healing and damage reduction, if she's at her Mythic Plus upgrade, that is going to protect your team a lot. Granny is a very difficult to take down tank already in her kit, and if you give her the Stalwart Helmet, it reduces the damage taken by 40%. She becomes so difficult to break through, especially if she can get up to a Mythic upgrade. She is going to be almost unkillable, especially if you have a Haywin to back her up with the healing. So this is why also Damien doesn't do as well, because you have Haywin as your healer, and usually that will be enough to sustain up your team. And again, the problem with Damien is that until his Mythic Plus upgrade, he's leaving a lot, he gets strong, really powerful at Mythic Plus upgrade. Another Wilder hero which really wants a Mythic Plus upgrade is Arden. But Arden, he's still positioned in the A tier, because even before the Mythic Plus upgrade, Arden can be pretty strong. However, he will become a lot more dominant at the Mythic Plus upgrade. So that's why he's in the A tier. If he were, for example, if you could guarantee get him to Mythic Plus before you get eliminated, he would be an S tier hero. So Arden will have crowd control for your team. He has the AoE damage, and that is why Bone Amulet is going to be the best piece of equipment for him, because he's going to be hitting all enemies, and then he's going to stack, or he's going to apply that effect to all enemies, causing them to lose 3% of their maximum HP per second for 5 seconds. Parissa is a very hard-hitting damage dealer. She is good even without her Mythic upgrade. She's going to hit hard. Her best item, and this is the first time we're seeing this equipment, is going to be the Fire Dance. So this is very similar to the Gaze of Power, which will allow you to cast the first ultimate without using energy, but it has no drawback, and in fact it even increases the damage dealt by the first ultimate by 20%, and then the energy cost to maintain the ultimate after that point will remain the same. So it's basically like just an upgraded version of Gaze of Power, no damage reduction drawback or side effect, and also having actually bonus 20% damage on her first ultimate. And Parissa, you want to ultimate as much as possible in the fight, and she hits really hard with it, can nuke enemies, so definitely Fire Dance is the best item for Parissa. The other heroes here, Brian, Leica, they can be used. They are not, and there is actually one artifact which specifically will want you to run Leica on the team to benefit your team's damage output, and you can run Leica there. And Brian as well. Both Leica and Brian kind of do well even without their Mythic Plus upgrades, so you can run them. But the overall dream team would be Granny, Floribel, Arden, Haywin, Parissa, the top 5 heroes here. As long as you could get the Arden to Mythic Plus. and if you're going for a full 5-man Wilder team. But you could also definitely run Lucius and Rowan. They do really well in the Wilder team. And you could run, for example, like, or just Rowan himself. You could do Granny, Floribel, Haywin, Rowan, Parissa. Something like that would also be a very strong team. But Ardent is great if you can get him up to the Mythic Plus upgrade. And you should be able to do that because Wilders are strong in themselves. Like, the other 4 heroes should be able to carry you even at the lower win counts. So that is Wilders. Okay, let's move on to the Maulers. So definitely the best Mauler in the game, or I would think maybe Brutus should be higher, maybe up to the S tier, because of course he has that invincibility and then it becomes difficult to kill. But Coco definitely is the best one because she has a damage reduction for your team that can buy you time, especially with the Gaze of Power, the instant cast at the beginning of the match. You're basically going to be unkillable for the duration of her ultimate, and then hopefully by the time it ends you would have already eliminated 1 or 2 of the enemies. Reese is the best damage dealer hands down in Honor Duel, and it's funny because normally you would think Odie is a good damage dealer, and generally he is, but Reese deals AoE damage, and for Honor Duel you really need that AoE damage, and Reese hits really hard. Fire Dance is of course going to be his best choice because again allows him to ultimate right at the beginning of the match. A lot of damage comes off from his ultimate, and it gives you the 20% damage boost on the first cast with Fire Dance, and with no side effect or drawback. If you don't have Fire Dance, for example, earlier on, and you only have the elite quality equipment, I think the best piece of equipment for him would be maybe Night Raven. I think Night Raven overall is a pretty solid equipment piece. Increase basic stats by 25% and life drain if no allies are placed. So you just need to position Reese like in the back or in a position where he has no adjacent allies, and 25% basic stat boost is no joke. The other thing I think would be really good for him is Sharp Bow. Increase damage dealt to enemy 3 tile away or further by 30% and increases extra damage to 50% if the target is 5 tiles away or further, and that is a huge damage boost, and you're probably guaranteed to at least get the 3 tile boost, maybe even the 5 tile boost. He is a long range marksman hero, so I would definitely think Sharp Bow would be a good option for him. And for the early game, like, we didn't really talk about this, but for the rare equipment, there are 2 really key pieces of rare equipment in my opinion. One of them is going to be the Exquisite Leather, giving you 250 initial energy on any hero, which will depend on his ultimate, like Cecia, Floribel, even Reese. Exquisite Leather is going to be a great option in the early game. Simple Bore is not bad. Increases damage to enemy 3 tiles away or further by 25%. It's a bit of a damage boost, and this is for the long range heroes. You could give it to Carolina, you could give it to Reese even. Cold Dagger is really good for Sylvina for the melee damage dealers because it increases damage to enemies 3 tiles away or closer by 30%, which is a big damage boost. So for any melee dedicated damage dealer, mainly the only one we've seen so far is Sylvina, maybe Igor or Salazar as well, but Sylvina would be the main choice. So those are the main rare equipment I would recommend, and then the final one is the Jungle Hood. But the Jungle Hood is a supportive one, increases healing and shield amount granted to allies by 40% apart from on the carrier. So this is the best equipment for Lucius, especially in the early game. Yeah, I mean, technically you could give it to Haywin, you could give it to Rowan and things like that, but really the shielding from Lucius, maybe even Coco in the early game you could give it, but the Exquisite Leather is really better on Coco and Haywin, and that's why really probably this is left for Lucius. But even Exquisite Leather can be given to Lucius for the faster shield ultimate cast. So that is that. Okay, now moving down the list, we have the Brutus. Brutus is a great tank. Even early game before he's ascended, he is going to have that guaranteed invincibility, and that will allow your team just a bit more time to deal their damage and try to kill the opponents. Here, the best installed equipment he's given to Brutus can also actually be considered the best installed equipment for Thorin or potentially other heroes. This is a very strong piece of equipment, especially when you have a highly ascended hero that you give it to, because if we take a look at its description, it is the Decaying Ring. It will grant allies of the same faction 11% of the carrier's basic stats. So if you have a factional team, maybe 4 or 5 of your team are all of the same faction, and you give this Decaying Ring to a tanky frontline or like highly ascended hero, 11% of their stats are going to be granted to all of your team, and that is a big buff. And especially for heroes that don't specifically need any equipment on their own, like Brutus doesn't really need any equipment. He's not like a major source of damage. He doesn't need damage boosting equipment. Thorin kind of, if you got him to his Mythic Plus, he would be plenty tanky. He doesn't deal that much damage anyway because of his damage nerf and Honor Duel, you could give him this Decaying Ring, and he would power up all the other Graveborns on your team. So this is a great piece of equipment, but it is elite. Or no, it is epic. So before this, you could really go for anything for him. You could go for probably like heavy. I think Night Raven, probably not heavy axe, I mean, because he's going to be frontline and a lot of frontline heroes will be attacking him. You could even go for more of a tanky position and reduce his damage output as well with Stalwart Helmet. Both are pretty good options. It would be up to you. And the other heroes selected here on Tundra, Lumont set. I'm honestly not a big fan of these. However, it can depend on your artifact choice as well. They could be good. Interestingly, you're going to see Smokey is really low tier. And that's because Smokey, before his Mythic Plus, he won't have any damage potential, and the attack and haste buff usually is not going to be enough, and his healing output is fine, but if he's interrupted or if he's killed or nuked early on, then it's really leaving a lot to be like desired. So it's better sometimes to just run another healer like Rowan. So if you're running a Mauler team, maybe you can run Brutus, Coco, Reese, Rowan, Lucius. That would probably be a better overall strong team to be running. Or even throw in a CC there. CC is a hero which slots into pretty much any factional team just for her crowd control, which is really strong in the Honor Duel. So something like that. But if you want to, you can run Antandra Lumont set. They would probably be the preferred options. Especially in the early game, Antandra Lumont are really tanky, even without high ascension. But really your key is your Reese as your damage dealer that you will want to invest in and ascend him, and Coco as well for the supported protection role, and then Brutus as a tank. Okay, moving on to the Lightbearers, we've already talked about Lucius and Rowan. If you're going to go for a Lightbearer team, definitely you have to use them. Then comes the remaining hero choices. So Vala, in my opinion, is the next best hero to be running. She has a lot of kill potential. He hasn't selected a best in slot equipment, but let's first look at... So Vala is kind of strange because at some points she's going to be dealing long range damage at the beginning of the fight, but then after that she could jump to her target, close the gap, and then deal close range damage. And so for that reason, Cold Dagger is sometimes better, and Simple Bow is sometimes better. At the beginning of the fight, Simple Bow is better, but then Cold Dagger becomes better as the fight goes on. You could also go for Exquisite Leather. As always, it kind of works for any hero and allows her to ultimate faster. But one really good option I like for Vala for an elite equipment is going to be the Hunting Armor. Again, because she can jump into the middle of the team. She could be susceptible to dying. This gives her more protection. I think it's not a bad choice, but also Night Raven I really like. The life drain can keep her alive, and the basic stat increase of 25% is no joke. And because Vala is usually the final hero you position because you don't want her to be targetable, you can usually position her in a way where she has no adjacent allies in the back somewhere, and she can get the advantage of Night Raven. So I think those are both good equipment choices for her. Temesia is a very good tank. There are certain artifacts, especially in Honor Duel, like one that comes to mind is the Lightbearer artifact, that each ally which has died will contribute some of their basic stats to all surviving allies. And so if Temesia is your final surviving ally and you had 4 other Lightbearers who are pretty highly ascended, all of their basically a proportion of their basic stats will all be given to Temesia as a final last standing enemy or hero, and she's unable to be killed. So Temesia is great for that in Honor Duel, and she is just overall a pretty good tank for Honor Duel. Again, probably you would want to go with something to increase her survivability. I would think probably the Stalwart Helmet, because her damage at Mythic Plus can be pretty high because she can deal true damage, but before the Mythic Plus upgrade, Temesia's damage will be kind of low, so probably just the additional survivability might be better. But you could probably even go for something like Heavy Axe because she's going to be charging enemies. So when she's dealing damage, they will be 2 tile away or closer. And because she's charging at them, then it's possible you could also trigger this reduction of damage effect onto them. So that can be good as well. Finally, they have the Cassidy and Walker here. Walker is not a bad choice, and Walker here, especially with the Stalwart Helmet to become even tankier and more difficult to kill, is probably the best choice because Walker is a melee hero, and so he is susceptible to dying. You will need that additional protection. Cassidy is a good option. But also you could just throw in like a Cecia, for example, throw in a Haywin as a final hero. These are the top tier Honor Duel heroes. You do not have to complete a full 5-man team of Lightbearers. Even if you have 4 Lightbearers, you're getting the 18% bonus stats from your factional advantage. You can put in any other final hero. It could be basically a support from other factions like Cecia, Floribel, Haywin, something like that. And you should be in pretty good shape. Merrily, not a great option, same with Muriel. I mean, you can use these heroes early on when these are the only heroes available to you, but when you're building around your basically team of 3 of a faction or up to 5 of a faction, pick from the higher tiers of this tier list and try to aim and look out for these equipment options that we've talked about. So anyway guys, hopefully this was pretty helpful in giving you an idea for Honor Duel. As for picking the artifacts, you can experiment with which ones work out better for you. There definitely are certain ones which are better, like for example the Pale Crown, and I believe the Snow Herb, the one for powering up Sylvina and Cecia, or Sylvina and Carolina respectively for the Graveborns. Those are considered some of the top artifacts, and if you find those, you can pick them and then force the Graveborn team in the early stages of Honor Duel, like in the first round, before you even enter the first battle. What I do is I usually refresh the shop until I find a faction pack for the faction I'm going to try to force that game, like either Graveborn, Wilder, or whichever one you're going for, and then try to get some factional heroes off the bat, and then in the following rounds, keep picking up that factional pack or pick up copies of the priority heroes you're really targeting. As soon as you have basically your team built up, then it's usually better. You can keep going for factional pack, especially if you have 5 of a faction in your team, like you're building a 5 faction team, because factional packs are likely to give you the odds are in your favor of being worth it. But if, for example, you're running a team of like 3 Wilders and 2 Lightbearers, then buying a faction like Wilder pack or Lightbearer pack will not be as valuable, because you're more likely to hit a hero which you don't actually want in your team. So that's just a couple of tips. But anyway guys, hopefully this was helpful and good luck with this. And again, like all that work, or all the credit goes to Lele Zero for making this tier list. I was just trying to explain it and give you some alternatives for the equipment, and so definitely you can check out his live stream in the description of this video. But thank you for watching guys, that's gonna be it for this one, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next video. And until then, everyone, peace out for now. And if you want to join my AFK Journey Discord, there's a link to that in the description of this video. But until the next video, everyone, peace out for now.